Welcome back. Find a comfortable position and let your body get heavy. Take a slow breath in and let it out. There's nothing you need to do right now. Know where you need to be. Tonight, I have 5 stories for you. Let them wash over you. You don't need to follow along closely. Just let the words carry you. Let's begin. The air was thick with the scent of fresh-baked bread as I settled into the small kitchen, its warm glow wrapping around me like a cherished quilt. Morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting soft patterns on the well-worn table where my grandmother used to set her prized china. The rhythmic sound of the timer ticking down in the background felt almost meditative, like a heartbeat echoing in a quiet room. I could hear the distant chirping of birds, drowsy and languorous, welcoming another gentle day in our little town. Outside, the sky was a pale, sleepy blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds that floated lazily, as if they were content to drift without haste. Steam curled into the air from the pot of coffee, rich and inviting, mingling with the buttery aroma of the bread that had just finished baking. I smiled to myself, recalling how my grandmother would always say that the best way to start a day was with good coffee and warm bread, sharing a moment that felt like a hug for the soul. After pouring myself a steaming cup, I wandered to the window, resting my elbows on the sill. The neighborhood was quiet, the only sounds being the occasional rustle of leaves or the faint hum of a lawnmower in the distance. A little girl in a bright red dress skipped by, her laughter bubbling over as she chased after a butterfly that danced just out of reach. The scene felt timeless, a snapshot of the simple joys of life that lingered in the corners of my memory. As the clock ticked softly, I thought about my upcoming visit with my dear friend, Lucy. It had been quite some time since we had shared a long chat over a meal. Lucy's house was just a short stroll down the street, its yellow paint bright against the greenery that framed it. She always had a way of making everything feel special, even the simplest of dishes, turning a casual gathering into a cherished occasion. I eagerly anticipated our reunion, my mind drifting to memories of our conversations. The way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, and how we would often get lost in musings about the world. However, knowing Lucy, I also had a tiny worry. She had recently mentioned experimenting with some unusual recipes. And so, with a slight flutter of apprehension nestled in my stomach, I grabbed a loaf of the still warm bread, thinking it would be a nice addition to whatever culinary adventure she had planned. After all, what could possibly go wrong with freshly baked bread? The walk to her house was peaceful and unhurried. I meandered through the neighborhood, nodding to the neighbors watering their gardens and a couple of kids launching paper airplanes off the porch. The sun felt warm on my arms, and the gentle breeze whispered sweet nothings, ruffling the leaves overhead. As I approached Lucy's home, I could already hear her laughter wafting through the open window, mingling with the scent of something simmering on the stove. With a soft knock, I stepped inside, greeted by her beaming smile. Just in time. "I'm making a new dish," she exclaimed, rolling her sleeves up and gesturing towards the kitchen where a colorful array of vegetables sprang to life in vibrant hues. "How does ratatouille sound?" "Oh, that sounds wonderful," I replied, handing her the loaf of bread. "I brought this along, just in case." "Perfect," she said, her eyes gleaming as she accepted my offering. "You know, it pairs beautifully with the ratatouille, and I love the story that comes with homemade bread. Did you know that?" But just then, a little disaster struck. As she turned back to the stove, the pan slipped from her grasp, clattering loudly and sending a burst of sauce cascading across the countertop. We both jumped, eyes wide, the moment stretching into a perfect silence before we erupted into laughter. "Oh my goodness. Well, that's one way to spice things up," I chuckled, grabbing a dish towel to help her clean up the mess. "Don't worry about it," she said, laughter bubbling in her voice. "In fact, I think this little disaster is going to make the food taste even better. You know what they say. The messier the cook, the tastier the dish. Nah." As we mopped up the bright red sauce, We reminisced about our clumsiest kitchen moments from years past. Each story led seamlessly into another, laughter echoing off the walls like a melody. There was the time Lucy tried to impress her family with a chocolate souffle, only to have it collapse spectacularly. We still chuckled at the image of her standing there in shock, looking at the flat pancake that was supposed to be, masterpiece. With the cleanup complete, we finally settled down at her dining table, the vibrant ratatouille steaming invitingly in a bowl, the freshly baked bread warming on a plate beside it. We dug into our meal, and I couldn't help but notice how the aromas blended together. The earthiness of the vegetables and the slight sweetness of the bread formed a delightful harmony. "This is delicious, Lucy," I said, savoring the flavors. "You really knocked it out of the park." I was worried about the taste after the little mishap, but I'm glad it turned out well, she said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Just goes to show sometimes things don't go as planned, but they can still turn out beautifully." We talked and laughed until the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow across the room. As the shadows grew longer, we began to wind down, our chatter fading into a comfortable hum. At some point, the conversation shifted to quieter topics, reminiscing about childhood dreams and the comfort of friendship. Sitting there with a belly full of food and a heart light with fondness, I felt a profound sense of contentment wash over me. Eventually, our laughter turned to gentle smiles, and a peaceful silence settled between us, like a cherished blanket. I noticed the way Lucy's eyes shimmered with the last remnants of day, the soft light reflecting her warmth. As the evening settled around us, I collected the empty plates and brought them to the kitchen, while Lucy took a moment to write down the recipe for the ratatouille, a bit of culinary magic that had brought us together. The last of the sun slipped below the horizon, and a gentle hush enveloped the house, punctuated by the quiet sound of my friend humming to herself. Soon Lucy joined me in the kitchen, and we stood side by side, cleaning up, the old rhythm of friendship wrapping around us like an embrace. "Can't believe we almost made a mess of the whole evening," I mused, a light laugh escaping me as I dried the last of the dishes. "Ah, but the best memories often come from a bit of chaos," she replied, a twinkle in her eye. "And besides, who needs perfection when we have this?" As I stepped back outside, the moon cast a silvery glow over the quiet street. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the lingering scents of our meal into the night. With the sound of laughter still echoing softly in my heart, I felt gratitude blossom within me, for the evening, for the friendship, and for the simple joys that life offered so freely. The world felt manageable and kind, as if each star in the sky was a reminder of the little connections that held us all together. As I made my way home, the cool air wrapped around me, comforting and familiar. I couldn't help but smile. The day had turned into a night filled with warmth and laughter, the kind of evening where the bond of friendship was renewed softly, without fanfare. And as I climbed into bed, the gentle rustle of my sheets enveloped me, the stillness whispering goodnight. I closed my eyes, feeling the sweetness of the day linger like the last notes of a favorite song, grateful for the quiet moments that always felt a little like magic. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. I remember the scent of fresh paint mingling with warm, buttery popcorn as I wandered through the halls of Maplewood Elementary School that autumn afternoon. The sun had dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue through the tall windows, and I could hear the soft rustling of leaves outside. It was a small town, where everyone knew one another, and the school felt alive with the echoes of laughter and the faint, sweet sounds of a piano practicing in the music room. I strolled through the brightly colored hallways, lined with artwork from each grade, all glistening like treasures under the afternoon light. The air was rich with the crispness of fall, and I could almost taste the nostalgia in the air, tinged with the sweetness of caramel apples. Each step I took was softened by the thick, worn carpet that lined the corridor, the kind of carpet that seemed to hold on to the memories of countless little feet scampering about, chasing down dreams and adventures. I made my way to the teacher's lounge, a familiar spot filled with chipped coffee mugs and a well-loved couch that had seen countless conversations, joys, and challenges over the years. As I entered it, I spotted Mrs. Collins, the art teacher, her curly hair a bright halo around a smiling face, chatting softly with Mr. Thompson, the math teacher, who seemed to be perpetually in a state of quiet amusement. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, and I could hear the gentle sound of the kettle whistling in the background as Mrs. Collins poured herself a cup. I joined them, and they welcomed me with warm smiles, the kind that felt like home. We began to talk about the upcoming fall festival, a yearly tradition that brought everyone together, parents, teachers, and children alike, celebrating the changing season with games, crafts, and laughter. But as the conversation drifted along, I noticed Mr. Thompson's smile waned just a bit, and he spoke, almost under his breath, about the recent changes in the school's administration. A new principal, Mr. Hayes, had taken charge, and his approach to running things seemed to be stirring unease among the staff. "I heard he wants to cut our arts budget," Mrs. Collins said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, her brow furrowed slightly. "Can you imagine? No art supplies for the kids. Like asking them to create masterpieces without paint or clay." Nyainen. I could feel my heart sink a little. Maplewood had always been a place where creativity thrived, where children learned to express themselves in all sorts of beautiful ways. Watching that slip away felt like a significant loss, muted in an otherwise vibrant setting. As we continued our tea and coffee hour, more teachers trickled in, each sharing their apprehensions about Mr. Hayes and the changes he was implementing. There was a low and gentle hum of concern, woven through their laughter. It felt poignant, like the leaves outside the window turning from green to gold, and then to brown, a beautiful transition that felt bittersweet. The thought of losing that sense of community tugged at something deep inside me, and I knew I had to do something, though I wasn't quite sure what. Days turned into weeks, and the crisp autumn air settled into the routine of school days. Yet, the conversation about the arts budget loomed over the staff like a cloudy sky that threatened rain, heavy and unyielding. It became a shared worry among the teachers, stifling the sparkle in their eyes. I could see the weight of it all in their laughter that started to feel more forced, and their smiles that, though still present, lacked their usual brightness. One afternoon, as the leaves danced wildly outside, I decided to host a meeting. I wanted to bring together as many teachers as I could to brainstorm our options, to find a solution, to rally together in a way that felt warm and hopeful. The lounge felt like the heart of the school, and I hoped to breathe some life back into it. That evening, armed with a stack of note cards and cups of tea, we gathered in the lounge once more. The room was filled with the low hum of camaraderie as ideas flowed, some practical, some whimsical, like hosting a bake sale, or organizing a charity art auction, or even reaching out to the community for support. I watched as the teachers began to share, their voices soft yet resolute. Mrs. Collins crafted a plan for a creative community day where parents could come, partake in workshops led by the teachers, and contribute to the arts fund. With each suggestion, the room felt lighter, as if the dark clouds lingering overhead were beginning to disperse, revealing bits of blue sky above us. As the weeks passed, excitement began to buzz throughout the hallways, growing like the crisp scent of apple cider wafting through the air. Posters were drawn, bright colors splashed across the paper, each one reflecting the unique, artistic flair of the teacher behind it. Students whispered about the upcoming event, their anticipation palpable, and I could almost see the glimmer of hope returning to their faces. Each conversation we had in the lounge, every shared smile felt like a small victory, a gentle reminder that together we could weave the fabric of creativity tightly against the winds of change. Finally, the day of the Creative Community Day arrived. The autumn sun peeked through the branches, painting dappled patterns on the ground as families gathered in the schoolyard, laughter ringing out like chimes on a breezy day. It was a celebration. Paintings hung on fences, tables adorned with homemade goods, cheerful music played in the background, and most importantly, a palpable sense of community thrummed through the air. And then there he was, Mr. Hayes, observing from a distance, his presence almost like a shadow within the sunlight. I felt my heart flutter with anxiety, wondering how he would respond to all our hard work. But the teachers pressed on, welcoming parents, inviting children to create, and smiling warmly as they led workshops. It was a beautiful sight, the very essence of what Maplewood Elementary stood for, weaving us together in a tapestry of colors and experiences. As the event unfolded, I caught Mr. Hayes smiling, his arms crossed, and as he listened to the laughter of children and watched them dab paint with wild abandon, something in his expression seemed to soften. I couldn't tell if he was just observing or considering the reality that was unfolding before him. There was a quiet sense of satisfaction wrapping around me, like a cozy blanket on a cold night. Little did I know that the seeds we were planting that day would blossom beautifully. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Hayes approached me more often, no longer just overseeing from a distance. He began to participate in meetings, seeking input from teachers, and embracing their ideas. It became clear that something had shifted. The joy of the students had resonated with him, and with time, he began to advocate for the arts budget, rediscovering the importance of creativity within the curriculum. Eventually, we got the news that our arts funding was not only restored but expanded, allowing for new supplies and even better programs for the children. The relief flooded through the halls like a warm embrace, and we all breathed a collective sigh of gratitude. Maplewood was not just a school, it was a sanctuary of learning, growing, and nurturing creativity, and it was being protected. As the school year wound down, I often found myself stepping into that familiar lounge, where laughter no longer masked discontent, but instead rang out boldly with the promise of brighter days ahead. There was a newfound warmth as Mr. Hayes joined us, his laugh mingling with ours, and I could feel the bonds we had formed growing stronger. It was a mix of humility and joy, watching our little community navigate something together. A shared understanding weaving us into something more resilient. On one particularly bright morning, as spring began to stretch its arms, I stepped outside, the sun warming my face and the air fragrant with blossoms just beginning to bloom. I took a moment to breathe deeply, soaking in the sense of accomplishment and peace that settled over me, feeling grateful for the gentle turns of fate that brought us back to joy, together. It was a reminder that sometimes, even in the face of change, kindness and togetherness could steer things in a better direction. The laughter echoed around me as I walked back inside, the chatter and the clinks of mugs a warm welcome. And as I closed my eyes that night, I felt a soft breeze drift through my open window, carrying with it the sweet scent of spring flowers, letting me drift into the comforting embrace of sleep, knowing that light always finds a way to return, softly, sweetly, shaping the world around us. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. The sun had just begun to sink behind the rooftops of the little town where I grew up, casting warm, golden light that danced upon the freshly mown grass of my backyard. It was one of those late summer evenings where the air felt thick with the sweet scent of blooming honeysuckle and freshly baked pie wafting from the kitchen window. My mother was preparing cherry pie, the kind that bubbled over softly, its rich filling promising a delightful sweetness that could make anyone feel like a child again. I could hear her humming an old jazz tune as she rolled out the crust, her soft voice blending with the hum of cicadas and the gentle rustle of leaves in the warm breeze. I sank deeper into the worn wicker chair on the porch, soaking in those moments that seemed so ordinary, yet felt so sacred under the fading light. A few neighbors, 2 houses down, were setting up for a backyard barbecue. The smell of burgers on the grill mingled with the sweetness of my mother's pie, creating a comforting symphony of summer scents. It was around this time of year, when the days grew shorter and the evenings stretched lazily, that I found myself reflecting on the little quirks of our small town. Petty rivalries bubbled to the surface, often manifesting in humorous jabs instead of any real malice. The town was filled with characters, each with their own peculiarities, and a great deal of good-natured poking fun at one another. The most notable among them was Mr. Hargrove, our local postman, who prided himself on his punctuality and his impeccable delivery record. You see, Mr. Hargrove had one tiny flaw, a somewhat inflated sense of his own importance in the grand scheme of life, and he had taken it upon himself to convene each month a best yard competition, complete with a dubious plastic trophy that he kept in his front yard for display. It was all in fun, mostly. Neighborhoods would compete in good spirits, but in a town as small as ours, it was hard not to feel the friendly pressure to keep up appearances. With my mother busy in the kitchen and the sun beginning to turn the sky into a watercolor of pinks and purples, I went inside to grab a glass of lemonade. As I poured the chilled liquid, I overheard snippets of conversation from outside. Mr. Hargrove's voice boomed out, making proclamations about his own garden, which was, of course, the pride of the neighborhood. Best tomatoes in the town, I tell you, he declared, punctuated by an exaggerated chuckle that seemed to ring with the confidence of someone slightly too sure of himself. I smiled to myself, remembering the last competition, and how he had gone on and on about his secret recipe for fertilizing his tomatoes. A closely guarded secret of which the main ingredient was nothing more than a whole lot of love, coupled with some rather dubious gardening advice courtesy of a late-night infomercial. In a town as tight-knit as ours, the casual competition became a light-hearted ritual, one that brought neighbors together in the evenings, sipping lemonade or sweet tea while casually critiquing one another's lawns and garden gnomes. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the street, I decided to walk over to Mr. Hargrove's yard, basking in the late summer warmth. As I approached, I spotted a vibrant bouquet of colorful flowers that he had so carefully arranged right near the entrance. To any passerby, it was beautiful, as if it had come straight from a garden in full bloom. But I had seen the other side of that display. I had been privy to the secret, that those flowers were mostly wilting, and he had fashioned them so cleverly by mixing in a few bright artificial ones to cover up the sad reality. I chuckled at the thought and, in a moment of inspiration, decided it was time to lean into the friendly rivalry with a little twist of harmless mischief. With my heart light, I hurried back to my mother's kitchen and pulled out a few vibrant fake flowers left over from last Halloween. They were bright and colorful, and I could imagine them nestled among Mr. Hargrove's wilted blooms, utterly convincing at first glance. I set to work, carefully arranging them as dusk began to settle over the neighborhood. I could hear my mother humming softly, oblivious to my growing excitement. I sneaked back over to Mr. Hargrove's lawn, the warm breeze brushing my cheeks as I set them in place, each flower a bright beacon against the fading light. The glow of the setting sun made it feel like I was in a dream, tipsy and giggly with the delight of a minor rebellion. The next morning, as I stepped outside with my lemonade, I caught sight of Mr. Hargrove surveying his yard with the intensity of a seasoned general ready to review his troops. His face lit up with approval as he admired the new additions I had stealthily planted. From across the street, I could see him inspecting every angle, nodding and taking mental notes of the burst of color that seemed to invigorate his flower bed. "It's a new day in the neighborhood," he called out, drawing the attention of nearby residents, who gathered to admire his garden, completely unaware of the little trickery involved. I couldn't help but suppress a smile as neighbors complimented him, indicating that the charm of his yard had certainly increased overnight. Over the following weeks, Mr. Hargrove continued to beam with pride, attributing his flower bed's newfound vibrance to every gardening tip he had ever heard. I watched with quiet amusement as the plastic flowers seemed to flourish invisibly, even surviving an unexpected rainstorm that would have left mere blossoms bedraggled. Each time I passed his house, I marveled at how blissfully unaware he remained of the secret. It became my little joy, my quiet chuckle in the mornings, as I watched him talk animatedly with neighbors, sharing tips about the new fertilizers he had found to keep those flowers bright and cheerful. Yet, just as seasons change, so did the timing of the annual Best Yard competition. As the days turned into crisp autumn evenings, the competition drew near. Mr. Hargrove, bursting with confidence, rallied the neighborhood with enthusiasm for what he believed was his sure victory. The day was filled with laughter. Neighbors gathered in their best outfits, and I donned my favorite cozy sweater, settling down to watch the festivities unfold. When the winner was finally announced, it was a surprise to everyone, including Mr. Hargrove, that the title went to Mrs. Tully down the street. She had transformed her modest patch of land into a charming retreat, dotted with pumpkins, cornstalks, and twinkling lights. The beauty of her display charmed everyone, and in that soft autumn afternoon light, as the community surrounded her with cheers, she accepted her plastic trophy, a symbol of triumph that seemed to sparkle in the golden hue. Mr. Hargrove chuckled good-naturedly, realizing the good humor in it all. He embraced Mrs. Tully, congratulating her with warmth, dismissing the little embarrassment of having his secret flowers revealed. I felt a soft smile stretch across my own face, seeing that even in playful rivalry, the heart remained gentle, the laughter warm. As the shadows lengthened that gentle evening, I returned home, the stars twinkling overhead, and settled once again in my familiar wicker chair. I listened to the soft whispers of the wind in the trees, the comforting sounds of summer taking its leave. The memories of that playful exchange lingered in my mind, a gentle echo of laughter and good-natured camaraderie. In the quiet of my soft, dim room, I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. Such simple joys, such lovely moments stitched together in a small town, wrapped me in a blanket of warmth and comfort. I leaned back as the world outside grew still and allowed my eyelids to grow heavy, lulled by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant chirp of crickets. In that tranquil space, I felt light, serene, and safe. The swaying of trees outside my window and the sweet scent of lilacs drifting in started, weaving dreams of gentle laughter, shared moments, and the quiet beauty of neighborhood bonds. And with that, I let myself drift away, the sweet comfort of home enveloping me, as the stars twinkled softly above. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. I remember one particularly brisk autumn afternoon, when the air was crisp and filled with the distinct scent of fallen leaves. I decided to take a walk through the small town where I lived, bundled up in my favorite wool scarf that wrapped snugly around my neck. The trees had donned their vibrant costumes of golds and reds, leaves fluttering to the ground like confetti celebrating the change of season. As I ambled along the cobbled path, the soft crunch beneath my boots was oddly satisfying, like a gentle reminder of the passage of time. The quaint shops dotted along the street gave off warm glows from their windows, inviting and cozy. I could see the flicker of a candle through the one cafe, its aroma of roasted coffee beans wafting through the open door, enticing passersby to linger a little longer. I paused for a moment to watch a couple inside, laughter spilling out into the chilly air, their steaming mugs clutched in gloved hands, eyes sparkling like the sunlight caught in the golden leaves outside. As I turned the corner, I noticed a small park that I had almost forgotten about. It lay cradled between two old brick buildings, the kind that had stories buried in their walls. The delicate crunch of the leaves underfoot was replaced by the soft rustle of the wind as it whispered through the bare branches above. I took a moment to breathe, allowing the crisp air to fill my lungs, carrying with it a sense of calm. I could see children playing on the swings, their cheerful giggles rising like birds taking flight. As I wandered deeper into the park, I found an old wooden bench that called to me like a cozy chair by a fireside. I settled in, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath my fingers, and closed my eyes for just a moment, allowing myself to sink into the stillness. The distant laughter mingled with the rustling leaves, creating a gentle symphony of autumn. Just then, a soft voice broke the calm, and I opened my eyes to see an older woman sitting on the other end of the bench. She looked to be in her late 60s, with cloud-white hair tucked neatly under a blue knitted cap. Her cheeks were rosy from the cool air, and she wore a patchwork coat that seemed to tell stories of its own. She smiled at me, a warm and inviting smile that reached her eyes, which sparkled like dew-drenched grass. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she said, her voice gentle and soothing, like a quilt wrapped around me on a chilly night. "It really is," I replied, smiling back. "The colors are stunning this time of year." We lingered in comfortable silence for a moment, enjoying the view of the golden leaves dancing to the ground, each landing softly as if to emphasize the peace that settled over us. "I used to come here with my husband," she said, her gaze drifting off as she recalled a memory. "Every autumn without fail, we'd sit on this very bench. He loved to watch the children play. Nay." I could sense the warmth in her reminiscence, the way it flowed effortlessly, mingling with the crisp air. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "And do you know," she continued, her expression shifting slightly, "we used to bring a thermos of hot cocoa. I'd make it special, with whipped cream and mini marshmallows. Just a little extra sweetness to brighten the day." Nine. At this, a wry smile crept onto her lips. "Oh, of course, I would inevitably spill some on my coat, and he would tease me about it for the rest of the afternoon. But I think he loved the way I blushed." Nay. I chuckled softly. There was something irresistibly charming about her stories, and I found myself leaning in closer, eager to hear more. We talked about the simple joys of life, the beauty of a shared laugh, the comfort of a warm drink on a chilly day, and the magic that autumn brought to the world. As we continued our conversation, I couldn't shake the sensation that time had slowed down. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a soft golden light, and the park began to quiet as the children's laughter faded into the distance. The air grew cooler, but I felt warm in this moment, wrapped in the memory of her stories and the gentle companionship of a stranger. After a while, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn-out thermos. "Would you like some cocoa?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "I promise I won't spill it all over you." I couldn't help but smile, surprised by her unexpected kindness. "I'd love some, thank you." She poured the rich, steaming cocoa into 2 little paper cups she had tucked away, her movements steady and practiced. The aroma enveloped us, a combination of chocolate and something else, perhaps a hint of cinnamon that made it all the more inviting. I took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through me, a comforting hug from the inside. "Ah," I sighed, "this is delightful. Just what I needed." "Mm." Her laughter rang out like gentle bells, bright and pure. "It's the little things, isn't it?" she said, raising her cup. "A good cup of cocoa, a friendly chat." We continued to sip our drinks, allowing the silence to unfurl between us, comfortable and warm. The sun continued to set, casting long shadows on the ground, and the world around us seemed to slip into a serene stupor. The leaves swayed gently with the breeze, as if to echo our peaceful hearts. As the sky deepened to a dusky shade of indigo, she shifted slightly, glancing at me before speaking again. "You know, it's easy to feel lonely sometimes. But moments like this remind me that kindness is everywhere, if you just open yourself up to it." I nodded, smiling at her heartfelt insight. It was true, I thought. These simple interactions often carried the most significance, weaving a thread of connection amongst strangers. Before long, the sunlight dwindled and the park began to empty, leaving just the 2 of us on that little bench, wrapped in our shared warmth. I could feel a gentle heaviness in my eyelids as the relaxation of the evening settled in around me. "I should probably be heading home soon," I said, not wanting to disturb the peaceful rhythm that had formed between us. She looked at the ground, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup, lost in thought. "Perhaps some cocoa will accompany you on your way," she suggested softly. "Take the warmth with you." "I'd like that," I replied, genuinely touched. She carefully poured the last of the cocoa into a cup and smiled as she handed it to me. The small act felt imbued with so much more, an unexpected gift of warmth and kindness on a chillier day. We shared a quiet moment, eyes locking for just a heartbeat longer than usual, an understanding passing between us that needed no words. It was a connection born from the simplest of exchanges, and I would carry it with me long after we parted. As I stood up, preparing to leave, she reached out and gently squeezed my hand, her grip reassuring and warm. "Take care of yourself," she said, her voice soft but strong like fabric well worn and cherished. With a nod and one last smile, I turned to walk away, the paper cup warm against my palm. Each step felt lighter, buoyed by this unexpected encounter. I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp air, and with every exhale, I released my worries into the twilight sky. The leaves rustled softly behind me as I made my way toward home, the cocoa still warm and comforting in my hands, a reminder of the kindness that dwells in the quiet moments of life. I imagined myself sitting on that park bench again on another autumn afternoon, sharing cocoa and laughter, feeling the warmth of connection wrap around me like a soft blanket. Arriving home, I flicked on the lamp in the corner of my living room, casting a gentle glow across the cozy space. I could still taste traces of the cocoa on my lips, a sweet reminder of the afternoon. And as I settled into my favorite chair, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the day that had unfolded. The world outside began to hush, and I inhaled the stillness of the evening, hands cradling the warmth of the cup. As I leaned back, eyelids growing heavy, I realized that sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness that create the most profound shifts in our hearts, reminding us that we are never truly alone. With a contented sigh, I set down the empty cup, the warmth of the moment lingering like the last notes of a gentle melody. And with that, I allowed myself to drift into a peaceful slumber, embraced by the quiet, the warmth, and the kindness that filled the air around me. Let yourself relax as we begin the next story. The kettle was humming softly on the stove, producing a gentle, rhythmic sound that filled the cozy kitchen. I watched the steam curl and dance upward, swirling in lazy spirals as I stood by the window. The late afternoon light spilled through the glass, casting a warm glow on the well-worn wooden table. Everything felt just right in that moment. The smell of ginger root steeping in a pot, mingling with the sweetness of honey I had drizzled in earlier, creating a fragrant embrace of warmth. Outside, the leaves rustled lightly, a ballet of amber and gold, as they nodded to the wind, inviting the autumn chill to twirl through their branches. I took a deep breath, letting the aromas settle into the corners of my mind, while the world beyond the window moved quietly, almost dreamlike. It was a Saturday, and the house was filled with a serene quiet, a delightful stillness broken only by the occasional sound of distant laughter or the soft chirrup of birds returning to their nests. I leaned against the cool countertop, feeling the reassuring solidity of the granite against my back, and could almost hear the echoes of comforting conversations from the past, the laughter of friends gathered around this very table, sharing secrets over steaming cups. Today, though, it was just me and my thoughts, and I had a story that had been waiting to unfold. Earlier that week, I had made a decision that felt monumental, one I had danced around for months. It was the kind of choice that had been brewing quietly beneath the surface, like a pot of water waiting to reach a rolling boil. I'd been contemplating whether to accept a job offer that seemed safer and steadier than my current freelance work, which often felt like navigating a small boat in a stormy sea. I could see the appeal of that steady dock, a place to return to, day after day, a space where the waters of uncertainty could settle. But at what cost? The question had clung to me like the last leaves of summer, beautiful yet burdensome. I remembered the moment I made the call to decline the offer. My heart gave a little hiccup as I pressed the phone to my ear, my fingers tracing the stitches of my favorite old quilt. There was something comforting about that quilt, worn and soft, with its collection of mismatched fabrics telling stories of rainy afternoons, spent stitching and dreaming. When the voice on the other end had asked for my decision, I had felt that familiar flutter in my stomach, a nervousness mingled with a strange exhilaration, as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out over a horizon that promised both freedom and uncertainty. "I think I'm going to pass," I had said, hearing my own voice reverberate around the quiet room, and although it felt like a leap into the unknown, I sensed the warmth of clarity washing over me even as I spoke. "Thank you, though," I added, the words spilling out like a gentle tide lapping at the shore, softening the decision. I could almost hear my heart sigh in relief. That evening, I made myself a warming cup of chamomile tea, a ritual that had often eased the anxieties swirling in my mind. I let the delicate flowers steep, their scent unfolding slowly, filling the kitchen with a calming essence. As I cradled the warm mug in my hands, I let the warmth seep into me, imagining it chasing away the lingering doubts that danced like shadows in the corners of my thoughts. I considered what lay ahead, allowing myself to dream about future projects and newfound connections, the simple joys that had always made my heart swell. The days passed gently, as autumn leaves continued to flutter down, painting the ground in golds and reds. Friends would drop by now and then, their laughter blending with the soft tunes wafting through the air from my little radio. One rainy afternoon, Ella came over, her smile as bright and warm as the sunshine peeking through the clouds. She flopped onto my couch, stretching her arms above her head, as if shaking off the weight of the world. "Care for some tea?" I asked, already knowing my answer. She nodded, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I could tell she sensed I had something to share. We settled into our familiar routine, curling up with steaming mugs and soft blankets as rain tapped a gentle rhythm against the window. I picked up a knitting project I had started ages ago, feeling the soft yarn glide between my fingers, while Ella sifted through the little trinkets I had scattered around the living room, a small collection of seashells from my last beach trip, a tiny glass bottle filled with sand. Isn't it funny how we hold on to things that remind us of different times? I mused, letting my gaze drift over the assortment. Like these shells. Everyone tells a little story, or holds a little secret, she grinned, winking playfully as she picked up a particularly large conch shell. "What do you think this one has to say?" "Maybe it's shared wisdom from a wise old turtle," I laughed. As we shared stories and sipped our tea, I felt a delightful warmth spreading through me, a soft glow that echoed the gentle rain outside. With each moment, I found myself reflecting on that decision I had made, the feeling of liberation that had washed over me when I chose to let go of the safer path. I shared my news with Ella, and as I spoke, I felt the weight of uncertainty begin to lift. "I just want to create without limits," I confessed, a sense of honesty bubbling to the surface. "To not feel tied down, you know. I think I need to embrace the unknown, even if it feels scary." "Nahan." Ella listened intently, her eyes full of understanding. "Sometimes it takes real courage to step into the unknown. But you're not alone. We're all figuring it out. Just take it one day at a time, my friend." As we sat there, nestled in the cozy warmth of shared moments, I realized that it was okay to feel lost at times. It was a part of the journey. We brewed more tea, the steam rising like shy whispers into the quiet evening air, weaving a tapestry of comfort around us. That night, I lay in bed, cocooned in the soft embrace of my quilt, reflecting on everything. The laughter of friends, the dreams mingling with uncertainty, the sweetness of possibilities dancing on the horizon. I felt grateful. Grateful for the tea, the conversations, the kind friends who were always just a call away. I realized then that personal growth doesn't always have to be grand or tumultuous. Sometimes it's simply about choosing to breathe, to embrace the ordinary, and to trust that whatever may come will bring its own beauty. As I pulled the quilt a little tighter around me, I felt the stillness settle in, a peaceful reminder that it was enough to be here, in this moment. The soft patter of rain continued outside, a soothing lullaby that played on repeat, lulling me gently towards sleep. The world would be waiting for me in the morning, a tapestry of chances and dreams. But for now, in the warmth of the moment, I let myself drift into that serene space between waking and dreaming, where the heart knows it is safe. And as I surrendered to the softness of sleep, I pictured that wise old turtle, a gentle guardian of the sea, nodding softly as I embraced the journey ahead. And that's the last story for tonight. You've traveled a long way to get here. Through 5 quiet worlds, 5 small lives, 5 gentle resolutions. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavy and warm. There's nothing left to think about. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just rest. Good night.